Hello everyone, it's me again, and it's you again. Yes, you. Thank you for being here, and yeah, let's have a look at modifiers in Blender. What are they? What are they used for? And how do you use them? And which ones are the most important ones? If you have any questions for me, just let me know in the YouTube chat or in the Blender chat that I opened on blender.chat. So let's have a look here if there's anything already. Nothing there. Okay, let's have a look at modifiers. So here you can see my usual Blender scene. This is more or less what you see when you Blender open up for the first time. And oh, this is the default cube, our trusty friend in Blender. And let's use the default cube to demonstrate what you can do with modifiers. As I said in the title of this video, let's be lazy, or in my tweet that I sent out for this video, let's be lazy. Why do I say let's be lazy? The reason is that modifiers can help you doing things that you would have to do manually otherwise, and that can be really a lot of work. And once you change something, then you have to do the same work all over again, and the modifier basically dynamically does the same thing every time you change the object that a modifier is assigned to. So let's have a look how you can do this and what is available to us. This little default cube here is looking very alone right now. And let's say you wanted to have like a bunch of them, like a bunch of cubes all in a row. You can do that here on the right side in the properties panel. You can switch to the modifiers section. And up here, already you can see add modifier. And there's lots of things here that we can use. And right now, to duplicate this cube a bunch of times, let's just use the array modifier. What does it do? You can see there is already, yeah, the box or the cube seems to have grown a bit in the X direction, which actually is not quite the case. If you go into edit mode with tab or up here into edit mode, you can see it's still only this part is the real default cube. This part is what the modifier made out of it, basically. So it added another cube to the right of it, or to the positive X direction of it. You can see it here. It says fixed count, so it adds a certain number to our original object. Fixed count 2, so it makes it exactly 2 objects. This is our original object plus another one. It says relative offset, so it takes the object's size and uses it as a factor. So you can see factor x1, so it makes it in the x direction exactly 1 object over. And there's a lot more things that we can use here, but let's not look at that right at this moment. Just let's have a look what happens if we just increase the factor. It spaces it out a bit. Okay. And what happens if we increase the count? It gets longer. Let's do 10 of them. And if we space it out now, you can see there will be spaces between each of them. So you can basically have a gap between each object, and you can say how big it should be. In this case, it is 1.3 width of the original object. And in this case, the object is 2 meters, so it's 2 times 1.3. So we would have to calculate what that means. It's basically 0.3 times 2, and that's the gap between the individual objects. If you don't want to have the gap in between relative to the size of the object, but instead, like, it has always to be a meter between each object, then you can say, no, don't use the relative object, but use constant object, a constant offset, relative offset and constant offset. You can see now there is not just a number, but there is a unit behind of this. So it says 1 meter. So 1 meter from each object, the object center will be the next object. And let's put that to 2 meters. Now we have basically the same again that we had before, and a bit larger, and the gaps start to appear. So every center of each copy of the objects is 2.1 meters apart in this case. This is in the X direction, all in this direction. We can also do the same thing in the Y direction. So let's put here 0, 2.1 in the Y direction. Does exactly what you would think it would do. Pushes the objects in the Y direction. And of course the Z direction, the same thing, 2.1. Stacks them on top of each other. And yes, of course, we can do more than one at the same time. Let's do 2.1 here and 2.1 here, and you go diagonally. So you have 2.1 meters in this direction and 2.1 meters in this direction, and so on and so on and so on. So you're going in a diagonal line. Why do we do this with a modifier? You can copy them, of course, like this, all the same. But if you use the modifier, you can start editing your original object. Let's do Ctrl-R, loop cut, pick the center vertex, grab it and Z direction, pull it up, and you can see the same thing happens on all of the objects. This is very useful if you want to have a lot of the same objects all in a row or replicated by some rule that you set up here. And they always should look the same, no matter what you do with this object. You can rotate it, and all the objects are basically following along. This is one very, very simple use of a modifier. And by itself, yes, it is very useful, but it can do even more than this. Let me just put it back just in the X direction. Now, what we can do, let me just get rid of this one, because this is a bit confusing if you see all this stuff. Dissolve edges, dissolve edges, right. So, there's another one down there, dissolve edges. Okay, now we are back to our default cube. Okay, what can we do to improve it? What can we also do to stack modifiers? Here, you can see this is a modifier stack. You can fold them up and down, and there will be more modifiers coming up here if you add them. Let's be lazy again and put another array modifier on it. What happens now? Let's fold the one here. Now what happens is that it takes the whole thing that was created here and creates another array of the whole thing here. So we have a modifier that modifies a modifier. So it basically stacks on top of it. So what happens here, you can see this is the same that we had before, and here is the next one that looks exactly the same, but is spaced right at the end of the first one. So you can push it out a bit, and then you can see we have two of the same. So one is modified by the first modifier and then copies it a second time, or a third time, a fourth time. How many copies you want, and you guess it. Of course, we can't do that only in this direction. We can do this in the other direction. And what happens now is that you can make a grid of objects. So you have one array that goes in the X direction, and the other array goes in the Y direction, taking what has been calculated for the X direction and copies it over in the Y direction. And yeah, let's do that again. Array modifier, and do the same into the Z direction, Z direction. And now we have a box of boxes of boxes. So you have a stack of lots of lines of boxes, all made by arrays. And if you just change one of these, just the one down here, everything would change. So this is very cool for maybe motion graphics, when you want to have repeating patterns on the screen and they should change and they should move around. but still all of them should look the same, then you can do this with array modifiers. And of course you can animate all this. That's what you saw in the intro loop where the handwriting, my bad handwriting came up. I did that, of course, with a modifier. And you could use this value, the z value 1.5 here, and just move it up and down and animate this to create some kind of loop for a motion graphics effect or whatever you want to do with it. How that works is very simple. We start down here. You can see this is a timeline. You can click it and move it around. Let's click here. This is how you're supposed to do it. So you click on the top of this this playhead, and you can move it back and forth. Move it to the first frame. Shift left goes to the first frame. And let's just hover over it with our mouse on that setting here. Push I. This inserts a keyframe. Keyframe is important for animations. Then let's move the playhead over to 100. 100. Cursor left and right can move the playhead as well. And just say, what do we want to have here? Let's do 2.5 something. Like this. Good enough. Press I again, and it inserts another keyframe. You can see the keyframes here. There's one keyframe at frame 1. There's a keyframe at frame 100. And you can see here, green means there is a keyframe, but not at this actual frame 112. So it will be calculated between these two. And there's no keyframe coming up, so it just stops at that value. And when you go to exactly from 100, you can see it turns yellow. And that means there's a keyframe exactly at frame 100 on this property. If you question in the YouTube chat, if you animate an array, can you identify single elements of an array and modify them differently, like make an undulating sine wave? Not that easily, because an array is just that, is an array, but you can add another modifier on top of that will basically move all the individual pieces in a sine wave motion. And try that. How this works first. So you can see it here. It just runs up and then changes up to the value that you set up here. In this case, it does an ease in and ease out motion. That's by default. You can change that as well, but that's for animating time. All right, let's remove this keyframe. And let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can do a sine wave motion. I'm not sure if we want to have the full modifier stack, but let's see what happens. I assume we can do that with the wave modifier. There's one modifier that's called wave. I haven't used that yet, so this is experimental. Let's see what it does. We have fall off, we have height, we have width, and narrowness, start position, and time. We do time. Yeah, it's shaking a bit. You can see it maybe. Let's go here. Oh, no, it's not really visible. Okay. Speed, texture. Start position object. Time. Texture, we don't have a texture, but we could probably animate it with a noise texture. Or with a wave texture. Let's see if we can do that. Voronoi magic. Okay, don't have that here. Okay, we need to do that differently. Time offset live. Fall off along motion X and Y. I want it to be in a Z direction. Okay, let's do it differently. Let's do it with a curve. Curve might be easier. So we start down here at the origin. Remember, this is the 3D cursor, and every new object that you create will start at the position of the 3D cursor. adding, go out of edit mode, add a curve, Bezier curve. You can't see it yet, it's hidden by all these boxes, but it is selected right now. You can see that in the outliner up here. Let's go in isolation mode, which is the slash on the number pad. Now we can see our curve. Let's rotate it on the X by 90 degrees. Going into edit mode, so we can move it around without changing the origin, because we want to keep the origin at a 0 point for now. Grab it and move it over in the X direction by, oops, that's one too many. Grab it to the X direction -1. So, rotate, go in front view, so we only rotate in this plane. Rotate like this. Pick this one, rotate like this, and scale it up a bit so we have a wave-like motion. Let's see if that really works. Okay, that looks like a wave. It's not exactly a sine wave. We would, yeah, you could do that in the animation editor and add a sine wave, a perfect sine wave to it. Let's see if that works at all. Not just believing it would. Okay, so this is our curve. And we go out of isolation mode. Go back into our boxes stack. And I think we would have to insert it in between here. Let's see what happens if we just put it on top of the same thing. So I added another modifier, a curve modifier. Now I can pick the curve from here or just select it from the list. There's only one here. And it is doing something already. So, deform axis, probably we want to... yeah, we want the individual objects inside the whole stack to move and not the stack in itself. So let's rearrange this a bit. Is that the right thing to do? No, it's not. Because I thought Z would be the correct thing. Alright. We could fit it along the curve, but that's not what we want. We want to actually deform it. And yeah, the Z-axis is correct, but I guess it's just deforming too much. Because what I wanted to do right now is just grabbing the curve and moving it in the X direction, but it is not really cooperating. But that could be because I haven't applied the rotation and scale. Rotation and scale. It's doing something else now. Yeah, it's not exactly doing what I hoped it would do. I know it is possible, because I have seen it already before. I would have done it this way, but probably it's not quite the way to do it. The funny thing is, the boxes are moving in another direction from the curve. Yeah, I'm moving the boxes, not the curve. Okay, but same thing happens. Okay. What happens here? Curve looks good. Origin looks good. I applied all the transforms, so that's not the problem. Let's go back into the modifier. What you can do, you can switch on and off modifiers. So if something is going wrong and you want to find out if there's something wrong with one of the modifiers, you can just switch them off. Let's just try that here. And go back. So, there you go. See, I was thinking the boxes were stacked in the other direction. This is probably why it happens. So, rotate Z 90 degrees. Scale it like this. Apply the scale and rotation. Okay, and let's see what happens now if I re-enable this. Okay, it does this thing. Probably just way too large. Only Z. Okay. It's still rotating the whole box. Yeah, it is perpendicular to the curve in the Y direction now. Yeah, it is. Okay, so what we have to do here with path animation. Yeah, we'll have to do that in a bit. Go back here to the modifier of our boxes. And deform axis. Yeah, it always does that in a 90-degree angle. I'm not exactly sure why it does that right now. Yeah, this is what I would expect. Okay, this is what I would expect. The origin is to the same spot. This is always important to have the origin in the same spot if you want to move something along the curve. But it is modifying the whole thing instead of just displacing it. And I assume you wanted to displace it along the curve, so you have basically this whole box and it's doing this wave motion inside the box. And that is what I'm about to replicate right now. I think this is it. I think this is it. This looks more like it, at least. Yeah, it does some kind of that motion. Okay, let's do this again with smaller boxes, maybe. Maybe they're just way too big. Okay, they're moving along nicely now, but they are compressing along the curve. And I think I need to tell the array modifier that it has to be the full length of the curve. Not the point. So the boxes should still be boxes and just move up and down, right? Yeah, that's more or less a displacement and not a curve. But the displacement works with yeah, displacement would work with individual texture points and not with a curve. Tricky. You're always giving me tricky things. That's fun. Fit the curve. Not a relative offset. Relative offset? No, should be constant, right? I need to pick the curve first. Constant offset doesn't. Way. Direction. Yeah, it thinks the curve is way shorter. Why does it do that? I applied everything, right? I did. A curve comes after the whole thing was done. Object offset? No, it's not object offset. That's fun to play with the object offset as well. You can do spiral motions if you have an object that's rotated. Fit curve. This is getting there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that correct amount? 8. 6, 7, 8. How many did we have before? 10. Go 10. On fit curve, but on fit curve, I would expect now that it would show me all of them. And for some reason it doesn't. Yeah, fixed count 10. If we make that an array, enable that again. Yeah, this is what it does now. Okay. Get it down here. And I animated this property so it will reset whatever I set it here. Let's put another keyframe here so it doesn't reset. Yeah, what you are referring to can be done with an with an add-on that is called Animation Nodes. This is very similar MoGraph. I guess it stands for Motion Graphics. And Animation Nodes does very much the same thing, I would say. It is also animating pretty much every property of an object. Right, so if I move that along now, yes, now you can see it. And now it flies off because it just basically goes off the end of the curve and up to infinity. So I would have to create another wave of motion here for the same wave, and then repeat the animation back and forth. This is still deforming the objects. It's not just moving them. And if we want to do that, I guess we would have to use a texture that has a sine wave on it and overlay it here. Then we can use a displacement modifier, and that would work. But for a single sine wave motion, this is basically what you can do. I would want it to just affect the origins of the boxes. Yes, exactly. Everything nodes is something that a Blender is working on, and that will change a lot of animation based things. That will change a lot of the shader things and particles, especially because particle nodes are already working experimentally. So I would not recommend trying them out yet, unless you're really curious. But yes, they are working on the project called Everything Nodes, and that will change how you use animations. And most likely, I haven't seen the whole concept yet, but most likely it will also change how modifiers work. They will be in a nodes concept as well, I'm pretty sure. But this is one way to do it. This is still just modifying the whole geometry. It's not modifying only the center points. But I assume that could be done with a wave texture in 3D even, and then just move along the UV coordinates of that wave texture. But you can see even here with this version of the curve that I made, how much you can do with modifiers. Put that here. Snap it to this. Flying off into infinity because wrong axis. So there we go. Yeah, it's going off there again. Probably I didn't merge them correctly. Can't merge them here. Okay. Yeah, it's two curves, not one curve. So I have it here. I would like to merge them. And that's the fun thing, because normally if you have two vertices selected, you can do M for merge, and then they will merge together. In this case, control points. No, okay. Doesn't work like this here. This is usually in Blender, you can basically rely on things that they are working the same. If you're doing one thing in one editor, it does the same in another editor. Here, in this case, it doesn't seem to be like that. So let's do it a different way. Let's extrude it, because this works the same as it does in other editors. Let's extrude another point and basically create another sine wave or Bezier wave. And then we can move it like this. And in the end, of course, it flies off again. So we would have to make it even longer and then animate it in a way that it is seamless. Animation, of course, you can do as like as I showed before. The Y position of this curve starts here. So we go here and insert a keyframe, move it up to maybe 100 something. Move the Y position here to here. Insert another keyframe. And then you can play it back and it moves over. That will be how you animate any property in Blender that is able to animate. Not all of them are, but pretty much also a big number of them you can animate in real time like this here. Okay, what else do we have on my... This looks funny. Okay, it's still looking for the curve, right? Yeah, it is. Okay. What else can we do with modifiers? Let's add a plane. Get it up a bit. And yeah, make it like this. Apply scale. Now we have a flat plane. Let's make a bit of interesting geometry here. Grab it like this. Extrude it like this. Extrude it like that. And this is maybe like a floor plan or something like that. And if we want to give this plane some thickness, we of course can extrude it. So let's go here, extrude it and down or up. Let's give it some thickness. So now you have like a floor where you can walk on. Let's say you're not really sure how thick this floor is going to be in the end, and you want to have it as a parameter so you can change it later. In that case, you can add a modifier to it, and this one is called Solidify. This is one of the more interesting modifiers when you start having surfaces that are curved in some way, shape, or form, like looping around things, and you want to give them some thickness. Then the Solidify modifier is usually what you want to do. You can see that it already added some thickness to it. This object is very, very big, so it won't be very visible right now. So let's make it bigger. There you can see the thickness is like 1 centimeter. And there we can just pull it up to maybe, let's be a meter. And it pushes it downwards. So now we have a thickness of a meter, and whatever geometry we now add or change here, it will always keep the Solidify modifier up to date. So if we just move that down here, you can see it always moves with the one vertex that I move here. Can scale these a bit, maybe rotate them. You can see it always follows. So you can always change it later if you think it's too thick even. So let's just go for 0.5, and then it just follows this modifier. Then you can choose, you see offset is -1. You can select where the extra geometry goes. You can have that in the center. Like this, 0.5 should be about the center, if I'm not mistaken. It's not, oh yeah, it's 0.25 in this case. 0.25. It's in the center of the thickness. So you can see, not quite. Okay, I'm not understanding the offset correctly. The thickness from the center should be probably offset because we have our origin point at the top. That could be. So you can set it up here, like to be in the center. And then goes up and down. Oh, right, yeah, because I deformed it, and it is no longer really flat. And the middle is now here, no longer up here. That's why the offset didn't work the way I thought it should work. Try that if I'm correct. Push that up. What I'm doing here is grabbing on the Z-axis, then holding the control key to snap it to a vertex, which is up here. vertex snapping. So it has always the same height as this one. Snap that here. Grab it, z-axis, snap that here. Looks very good to me. Yeah, looks flat to me. You can scale that on the z-axis for 0 just to be sure, but yeah, nothing changed, so it is correct. Does the bevel modifier work with Solidify? I'm pretty sure it does. Let's try that out. Let's pull it up again. Bevel modifier. What it does, it creates bevels around sharp edges like this one. This looks ugly because there's no setting for it yet, because I haven't really set up anything. Scaling. Now you want to have your scaling right, because beveling only looks correct if the scaling is at 1. Okay, let's have a look what happens if we, let's fold this up and let's change the bevel a bit. Let's do it like this. Right. This is probably how you would want to use your bevel, just to give your edges a bit of roundness. That will do a few things. That will make it look smoother, and it will catch light that comes from an angle and would otherwise just be ignored by the edge of the object. And there's a lot of things you can do to make it prettier. This is just, yeah, the basic bevel is not really pretty. We can add more segments to it. You can see it here. Right here where it clips, you can see how many segments you have. Put 3 segments on it. And then we can say, how do you want the bevel modifier to look at the object and see if it should apply a bevel at all, or if it should leave this edge alone. Like angle base, it should not make too much of a difference with a simple object like this one. Maybe here, you can see something here. By weight, yeah, if you do it by weight, you can paint bevel weights on the individual vertices and have them beveled in a more or less, so bevel more or bevel less. Vertex group chooses from vertices that you have in a specific group, so only those get beveled. Angle is probably the one that you will mostly use. Yeah, here you can see there it does make a difference on an angle like this one. If I increase the angle, it will pinch it a bit. So let's go back to none for the moment. Profile is interesting. This is the normal profile that we usually have. Super ellipse. I'm not really sure what that means, but it doesn't really make much of a difference. But custom profiles are very interesting. Let's make it a bit bigger so we can see it. Here. Go into the clip space again. This is our custom profile. You can see it is basically a mirror image of this one here. And you can add points here. Another point here. And this will follow the profile that I give it here. Let's do it like this. And add a bit more segments to it. So I can add more points. So you can, oops, not so far. You can, yeah, this will need to change. But here you can see how it basically moves around and follows the curve that I set up for the custom bevel profile. Here it is. This is interesting for floor ornaments for these. I'm not really sure what they are called. The things that you have on the wall. Or at the ceilings where it goes up from the wall to the ceiling. Yeah, a render option faking light on the edge. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a render option or if that's just an option right here in the viewport. It's a cavity rendering. You can drop it down, and there's here the cavity. There we can see how it exaggerates the edges, so we can see edges a bit better. I'm not sure if you can render that actually. But yes, you could use that to give your edges a bit of shine and save on geometry. Okay, let's go and shade this smooth and have a bit of auto smooth going on. Normals, auto smooth. Let's choose a good angle. Like this. And you can see it actually makes it look round. A bit too round for my taste right now, but it's okay. And let's go back to the bevel modifier, maybe limit it to angle. Doesn't make a difference here, would make a difference over here, I guess. Yeah. This edge is evil because it is not really friendly for beveling. So we would have to do a weight bevel here to have less beveling on that edge, so it would not look as weird as it does now. Yeah, it works together with the Solidify modifier. You can stack them on top. Just have skirting. Skirting it is. Exactly, yes. Fußleiste, skirting. You could use that for that or for something on the ceiling. Just to make it a bit prettier. This and right here it would be important. Geometry. Yeah, you can try different. It's called miters. I'm not exactly sure what the term really is. Sharp or arc. This changes how the pinch is done here. Yeah, this is not correct here. Okay. Yeah, this doesn't help us here, but there are several different versions on how you can tell Blender to work with these edges. I'm not too familiar with lower poly bevels like this, because this is really looking weird. Even here, but well, here it's okay. For the default thing, it's okay. Arc looks good. Yeah, was probably just my weird profile that just threw it off. Okay, yeah, we can use it for Solidify as well. And in this configuration, it is important which order you have your modifiers in. It always processes things from top to bottom. So it first solidifies and then bevels the edges. If I move them the other way around, the bevel would be applied to the flat planes, and there would probably nothing happening. Exactly, there's nothing happening. Because if I switch off the Solidify, you can see the flat plane, of course, doesn't get any bevel. There's no angles here that could be used for beveling. So put them the correct way around and switch it on again, and then we can see it. Okay, I guess the next modifier, I guess I showed that before, pretty sure, is the most important modifier, and I always demonstrated with the Suzanne model, because it is made to demonstrate exactly this. You have a lot of weird geometry here, and even if you shade it smooth, it only looks halfway decent. It needs more geometry, and in this case you add the subdivision surface modifier. This is pretty much the most important modifier that you can use for anything organic. So you have not so many vertices and still get a really good result. It just interpolates in between 3 points and adds another one there. You can see this is the edit cage on the outside. This is the original object. and the object inside is what the subdivision surface modifier created from it. And this is a level 1 in the viewport. If you render it, it would calculate another level, render 2, and make it even smoother. And you can, of course, preview it here. So you can work faster and render it very slow, like 5. It will take a moment, and it makes it really, really smooth. The camera is on the wrong side. Makes it then really, really smooth. Get the camera over here, rotate it. That's another angle. This. Look at it. Good. Yeah, it's a bit out of frame. Let's look from the camera's perspective. Select the camera, grab it, move it. Now we can render it. Yeah, this is super, super smooth now. This would take a long time if you just had it all the time on the screen in this subdivision level. So you can say, go back to normal. So you can say in the viewport where we are right now, we have only 1 level of subdivisions, and in rendering we get 5 levels. This is insane. You don't want to have 5 levels. Let's go back to 2. So yeah, that's basically the easiest thing that you can do to make your object smoother. You put a subdivision surface modifier on it. This is using the Catmull-Clark method, which was invented by these 2 people at Catmull, I think, and I'm not exactly sure about Mr. Clark or Miss Clark. I'm not exactly sure, but Mr. Catmull was or is a person working at Pixar, and they invented this method. There's another method, it's called simple. This will just linearly interpolate between each of the vertices. This also adds more geometry, but it won't smooth it out so much. This is more interesting for lighting effects where you have vertices that are too far apart and it's hard to calculate the shading in between. And you can add some simple subdivisions to improve that lighting, but it's not really that needed so much anymore. Unless you just want to subdivide it like this and then apply it. That would just add a lot of geometry to it. So apply, let's go back to object mode so I can apply it. And then you can see what it actually did. Jim Clark, yes. And assuming he's made exactly, I would assume that as well. So this is what the subdivision surface modifier does in simple mode. And let's go back and have a look at Catmull-Clark and apply this one. You can see it's much, much smoother. And of course, this is one of the first things that you do when you start modeling characters or start modeling anything that is organic and needs to have smooth curves. And you don't want to model all the small and little things. And while you are remodeling your mesh, you would have to smooth out everything again. And in this case, if you just have the modifier on it, you can keep modeling your mesh, keep modeling on your mesh, and the subdivision surface modifier will follow. That's a really, really big thing with modifiers. You mostly use them where you have geometry that is still changing, and you want it to, like this one, look smooth while you're working on it, and don't have to adjust all the vertices around it, and it will just follow and recalculate every time you make a change on that mesh. Okay, what else do we have? What else is interesting? I talked about the displacement modifier before. Let's have a look at that. Maybe not on Suzanne. Let's create a plane. Scale it up a bit. And right click, shade smooth. Subdivide it a bunch of times. You can open the redo panel and tell it to do it more often. And this is not enough for me. I wanted to do 100 times. Like this. Really, really dense geometry. This is something you only do if you need this much of geometry. Actually, this could be done with the subdivision surface modifier. You could have it in simple mode and have it do this before we add the displacement modifier. And to do that efficiently, you would have to use an experimental feature. That's why I'm not recommending it. You could have the adaptive subsurf that has a lot more subdivisions in the front of the camera, and in the back it would just leave out a lot of detail. So it would dynamically calculate it, but this is a bit too complex, and I probably would mess it up. So no. Okay, so we can create. I already have a my experiments from. I want a new texture. Let's call it noise. Where is it here? And I want to have it right down here. Is the noise? Is the texture panel? So if you have modifiers here, and this is the noise texture I created, I can go down here to the textures tab, find the noise texture. Here's more here. I want this one, and change it to be a noise texture. Or just cloud. Let's take cloud. Noise is just black and white now. White noise. I want clouds. Yeah, exactly. That's what I want. And let's increase contrast a bit so we see a bit more like this. Okay. And this is what comes out of that. So contrast a bit down right here. So you can basically create some uneven terrain or wiggly fabric or waves or something like that easily with a displacement modifier that takes its displacement from a texture that is created right here, like from a cloud texture. Or if you have a painted height map, you could put it on there and it would just follow that. And right here, of course, if this looks a bit too uneven and too jaggy, it's already smooth, we can add, of course, subdivisions on it. And this will make it an insane level of geometry. But right here, you probably would choose the simple method to keep the sharp edges. Because on the outside, the sharp edge would be rounded off if you use the Catmull-Clark method. It would just contract a bit and round it off. Right here, the simple method would just keep it, but add lots of geometry in between. And this is also completely procedural. You can still change whatever you want, and it will calculate it in real time. And of course, again, in viewport is just one level of subdivision, and render it would be 2 levels of subdivision. In this case, you can change that. And this here, yeah, you can choose if you want creasing, if you want to have parts of it really sharp and other parts be subdivided, you can define creases. Let's just do one of these. Let's choose this one. Shift E is crease, and you can see on the top left here, it says crease 1. You can just pull it to 1 in this case, and you see it will get this purple color to show you that this is a creased edge. If you go back, then let's remove the, or let's make it a bit stronger, I guess. And then we should see a line that is working differently around here. I can't see it over all the noise, I guess. Where's my crease? There it is. Yeah, here's the pinch here. You can see the pinching coming up here. Probably not the best example for this. The level of 2, you can see it pinching a bit. Yeah, it's not the best example. Probably could do that on Cezanne. It would look much clearer. Right. Go over here. Another subdivision on it. And let's see where it's subdividing here. Okay. Let's choose these edges, crease them to 1. Now you can see it, yeah. There is a sharp edge right here where usually the subdivision surface modifier would smooth it out. You can see it right here. So if you have an edge in your model that you do not want to be subdivided, then you can edge crease it, and it looks like this. It pinches it and basically keeps the information that is already there a bit stronger, so the interpolation would fall off to the sides more. I can see it here. Okay. Remove these. Any other things that you would like to see? There are lots of modifiers that we could look at, but of course each of them would take like a half an hour to properly describe it. But maybe there's another one that you want to see. Maybe shrink wrap. Shrink wrap is really fun. Move it up here. Rotate 90 on the x-axis. Move it over here. Add another Suzanne. Suzanne is so versatile for these things. Over here. Scale this up. Oops. Oh, here. Subdivide it again a lot of times. Yeah, we were at 100. Let's do 100 again. And make it smaller. This is okay. So what you can do, if you have an object that's your reference, and you want something to lay on top of this object, you can have a modifier work for you. So I can tell that our plane has a shrink wrap modifier on it. I can tell it to use this as a target, and it snaps to the geometry basically. And now we can tweak it a bit to sit not exactly on top, but maybe a bit like this. It's always above the surface, and it's looking maybe not projecting. Move it over. Yeah, now you can see what it does. It just pulls it over the object and creates new geometry inside this object that I have here. And if I apply it now just for fun, move it back again, you have an impression of Suzanne on this plane. So this can be fun for a lot of things. Above surface. Okay, let's do it on the surface again. And project, go back to nearest surface point. Pull it back to front. Exactly, you can see I'm pulling it out in the Y direction, but you can see it sticks here to Suzanne's front side, to the face. And if I enable the caging right here, where is it? I see the display right here. You can see this is the actual geometry, and on the right side of it you can see what the modifier does with it. Just keep it outside just a little bit. And the offset is how far it should be away from the target. I can wrap it around. Scale it in the X direction. Grab the outer edges of this, go into proportional edit mode with O, and move it all in the Y direction. Larger so I can really wrap it. Now you can see it follows the geometry right here as much as it can, because there is not so much geometry in the X direction as there is in the Y direction, because so in the Y direction it will be a bit more detailed. And I guess if I give Suzanne a bit more geometry also, yeah, the shrink wrap will work also. It will work better because there's more normals to go on. This is also fun if you just want to have something that is sticking to a surface, like a layer of paint or something, and you just want to move it along with the surface, and you don't want to have it as a texture or something like that, but as a piece of geometry that can in itself move and be modified. Then you can use the shrink wrap modifier to do that. Shade it smooth, and it looks even better. That's always a fun thing to do. Yeah, just asking again if you have a specific question. Doesn't have to be about modifiers. Still have a few minutes left. Maybe I can show you another thing. Let me just take this out and add a new default cube. So we're back at the beginning basically. So otherwise, I would say this was a very quick overview of Blender's modifiers, at least a few of them. So the most important ones, like Solidify, Subdivision Surface, Array Modifier. There are more, like the curve modifiers as I showed you. Then you can make long curves. That's what I did with the startup animation. Let's just have a look. My startup animation. This is what I did for the start. And there is a long curve going on here. Let's look at the curve itself. It looks like this. This is just basically a curve with a lot of control points, mimicking my handwriting, which is not very good. Out of isolation mode. And this is just an object that looks like a half dome. It's just one object. And it's just a long array of half domes right here in the modifiers. Let's fold those. First is subdivided. Okay, so it looks a bit prettier because it's just a box. Then an array of 854 meters because the curve is so long. And it is fitting the length of the curve that I give it in the curve modifier right here. Then Bezier curve is this one here. And this is what it looks like. And you can see the length is animated, is green. And on our timeline, there are a few keyframes. Starting at 0 or at 1, you can see length is 0 meters. And if I pull it to the right, you can see it just follows and increases the length of the modifier curve. It just goes on and on and on up here, up to there. And the rest of the animation is the text that is just moving in, and that is not a modifier, that's just a property of the text object that we have, which is down here, the character spacing, very simple. Just spaces them out. And at the first they are hidden, it's just a black color, and the color also is animated and fades in to be this bright orange color that you could see in the actual render. Very simple, but it works very well. So I would say, as you can see here, thanks for watching. And I hope there was something in it for you. And let me know if there's anything else you want to know in the future, and I will try to find something out for you and demonstrate it how it's done in Blender, because it is not that difficult. It's really it just comes down to knowing the tools and where to find them, and of course having an idea in your head how you want it to look and what you want it to do. So again, thank you very much for being here, and I hope I see you next time. Until then, happy blending, and yeah, thank you for being here.